I'm Ellie, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm wearing an excessive amount of purple at the moment. I'll get more into the outfit later, I promise. Welcome to First Unitarian, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good. We welcome you in your brokenness and in your wholeness, no matter who you may have been, who you are becoming. You are beautiful, and we greet you today with love. I'd like to extend a special welcome to everyone who is watching us on YouTube this morning. During the prelude, please introduce yourself in the comments to let us know where you're joining us from. If you're in Oklahoma City, what neighborhood you're in, or if you're elsewhere, what city you're in. One quick announcement, as a part of your safety team, your technology team, we have been made aware that there have been a number of attempts at scams with our congregants. Some of you have been texted asking for gift cards. The church is never going to do that. Some of you have been contacted asking for copies of the church directory. They are specifically using this because they want to get more contact information for the rest of you, so do not do this, please. So, and now the prelude prepares us for worship. Our chalice is being lit today by Miss Lana Henson, who is filling in for our director this morning. We'd like to thank her for that. We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice, and the flame of hope.
Again, welcome. I am Reverend Sue Redfern Campbell, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. For those in our community who are blind or visually impaired, or who are joining us online without video, I am a short white woman with short brown and gray hair, and I am wearing red and black, and I have a bright colored stole which carries my name tag and also my Junior Ranger Eclipse Explorer badge, which I was given at the OKC Memorial, where park rangers were giving an interpretation of the eclipse and handing out glasses and badges. I often walk with a cane. It's red today. And our ushers today are members of the Brew Group, B-R-U-U. The Brew Group meets monthly at a local pre-selected establishment for drinks, conversation, and fellowship. If you would like to attend or learn more about the group, you can contact John Schneider or Zach Martin, or if you don't know how to reach them, speak to any of the ushers today. Here at First Unitarian, there is a commitment to sharing pronouns and offering self-descriptions as part of the effort to ensure that no one is excluded from full participation in the life of the church. In this spirit of inclusion, our sanctuary is equipped with a telecoil hearing loop system, and please see your hearing aid provider to learn how to access this. And we have large print orders of service and large print hymnals, which are available at the back of the sanctuary. And it's a joy to hear our bell choir. This is my first time hearing them. And LaDonna has asked me if I would just highlight an announcement that's in the bulletin. But on Friday, the 26th of April, at 7 o'clock, right here, there will be a concert of the Oklahoma City Handbell Ensemble. So that's a chance to hear more beautiful bells. As we continue to settle into this sacred time together, I invite you to take a deep breath and let go of whatever is getting in the way of your just being present here. We can keep centering in with these words from the Reverend Angela Herrera Corin, who is the senior minister of First Unitarian Church in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards and the world needs vision. Bring them with you and your joy and your passion. Bring your loving and your courage and your conviction. Bring your failures as well, and your need for healing and your powers to be a healing agent in the world. There is work to do, and all that we need to do it is right here. So let us come in fully to worship and then reach beyond the walls of this church. Let us fill this sanctuary with love and then harness its power to stop oppression. Let us join together in worship and let us answer the call of love. I invite you to turn in your hymnals to hymn number 396. That's the gray hymnal, I know this rose will open.
Good morning. This is a round. We're going to sing it all together once. Then we're going to sing it twice as a round. This side will start. I will be your leader. That side will go second, and Ellie will be your leader on that side. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose.
I know this rose will.
I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose.
I know this rose
I
will.
know my fear.
I know my fear will.
I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Thank you.
Our story today is The Survivor Tree by Gay Sanders. Before I begin this story, I want to call your attention to the banner hanging off our pulpit. This banner was made and sent to us by a church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the youth group in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, after the Murrah City bombing. It hangs in our chapel, but we thought we'd bring it down here today for the service. The children and I grew up together as this new American city grew bigger and bigger. Nearly 100 years ago, I was a tiny cutting from a great American elm. A loving family planted me in their yard as the horses and wagons clopped along the dirt roads of a young town on the Oklahoma prairie called Oklahoma City. That day was the beginning of my story. Gravel roads became paved streets. Streetcars and automobiles replaced horses and buggies. Men built buildings so tall they were called skyscrapers because they seemed to touch the Oklahoma sky. Those were exciting days. I was still standing on March 22nd, 1977, when a building opened with a big celebration. The new building was given a name that day, the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. The Murrah Building was a busy place. Every day, all day long, people scurried in and out, men and women in suits who helped keep our country running, ordinary Americans and visitors who needed Uncle Sam's help, and the men and women in uniform who served in order to keep our country safe. Best of all were the many children from the little daycare inside the Murrah Building who came each day to laugh and sing and play under my branches. I always stretched my boughs extra wide for them, so everyone had a shady spot out of the hot Oklahoma sun, including the nice lady with the big red hat who liked to come and eat her lunch with me. Those were useful days. One bright April morning, as I waited for the children to come out and play, I watched as the city started another day. I did not feel the hate in the air, and I did not notice the big yellow truck parked so near the building. And then, boom. The ground beneath my roots shook, and the windows across the city shattered, and even the doors of our church blew off. The explosion was so loud, people heard it more than 50 miles away. And then, silence. That was the day the clock stopped at 9:02 a.m. What I saw next was stranger still. People did not run away from the burning Murrah building. People ran towards it. And then I realized they were running to help the people inside. That was a day for courage. Help came first from Oklahoma, but then it came from everywhere. By the end of that day, first responders from Arizona and New York had arrived. The first responders brought rescue dogs, wearing little shoes on their paws to avoid injury. Dogs and handlers searched tirelessly through the mountain of rubble as day turned to night and back again. One by one, the weary rescue workers and their canine helpers came and rested against my trunk, only to go back and search some more. My charred branches had no shade to offer them, but still, I was glad to give them what comfort I could that day. Like so many in Oklahoma City, I was not sure I would survive the bombing. That is what it had been, the loud noise that shook our city that April morning, a homemade bomb hidden in a yellow moving truck, left there by a young man who let hate fill his heart. The young man would be caught and would pay for his crime, but our city would be left to deal with the destruction the young man had left behind. Once again, the calls came to cut me down, but they did not cut me down that day. Instead, in short order, they climbed into my blackened branches and gently removed the debris and evidence that had collected there. Did they know I was alive that day? What was left of the Murrah building was put under a big, bright spotlight, and a fence went up to keep the area safe. And then, to everyone's surprise, the people began to come to the fence, 24 hours a day, rain or shine. I watched as visitors comforted one another and tied messages and keepsakes to the fence: teddy bears, photographs, a single red rose, a fireman's hat, a child's drawing, letters both long and short. The gifts filled the fence not once but over and over again. Each and every one was carefully saved when its time on the fence was over. Then 33 days, 21 hours, and 59 minutes after the day the city went silent, America gathered to watch the last remnants of the Murrah building come thundering to the ground. No one would ever have to look at that gaping wound that hate had brought. But the fence, it stayed, and the people still came. Those were healing days. The first summer after the bombing was followed by the first fall. The trees in the neighborhood turned bright with color and then were softly covered in the snows of the first winter. Through it all, I stood charred and alone, waiting. Those were uncertain days. I felt the warmth of spring arrive and the beds well up in my branches, and I knew before anyone could tell me that I was healing just as the people of Oklahoma City were healing. When my first leaf appeared, it caused quite a stir. The tree, it survived. That was a day of promise. The news spread like an Oklahoma wildfire through the city, the country, and even the whole world. People began to call me the survivor tree. People still came to the fence, but now they also came to see me, as once the little children and the nice lady had done. They said I gave them hope that they too could survive despite what had happened. My days had purpose again. When we gathered that first April to remember the 168 people lost on the 19th day of April 1995, I was there as I had always been. I was a tree that love had planted. I had become a symbol that love will always conquer hate. The families left that day with seedlings for me to plant at home, a remembrance of their loved ones and a tradition still followed to this day. My offspring now grow in every state in the Union, including on the hallowed ground at the memorial site of the September 11th attacks at the World Trade Center in New York City. It has been many years since the world went silent that beautiful, clear April morn, but every single day the people still come. Below me, a tranquil memorial park now stands with 168 chairs, one for each person we lost that day. One is for the nice lady who no longer comes for lunch. 19 smaller chairs for the children who once played beneath my shade. and one for the nurse who chose to run toward danger on that fateful day. People from all over the world now come to stand by me and remember. They mourn what was done in the name of hate and what we lost that day. And as they wipe away their tears, they vow never to let such an act of hatred happen again. They leave promising to teach their children the power of love and tolerance. I watch them go and know our world will be better for them having come here to see this place, to learn about what happened on April 19th, 1995. A day we promise to never forget. The end. Now is a time in our service where we sing our children and youth off to their religious exploration classrooms, where we'll continue talking about courage. Our youngest are learning about the power of self-affirmations. Our 2nd through 4th graders are learning about how to be a good bystander. Our 5th through 7th graders are continuing to talk about their new Dungeons & Dragons world, and our high schoolers are talking about Youth Sunday. Please join us in singing Go Now in Peace.
Hello, my name is Tom Perriam. I am with the Committee on Ministry. We are a committee of the church sort of focused on the effectiveness of our ministries and sort of self-evaluation and keeping track of the things we do and how we do them. I am he, him. I'm a white man, tall, in a peach shirt. Every Sunday, we take an offering. Since 2002, all the cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work, our Change for Change partners. For the month of April, our Change for Change partners, the Third Space Foundation for Juneteenth on the East. The Third Space Foundation grew out of Third Space, a co-working and community building environment in Norman, Oklahoma. Dr. Suzette Grilot founded the Third Space in the summer of 2019. Their mission is to create an empowering and supportive third place where all individuals feel welcomed and safe. Our contribution to the Third Space Foundation enables us to be sponsors for Juneteenth on the East Festival. For those who are in the sanctuary with us today, in just a moment we'll be passing the offering plate. We know that many of you prefer to mail in a check or make your donations to Change for Change online. You can always make your gift by mailing a check to First Unitarian, just write Change for Change in the memo line, or make an online payment through our website, oneuc.org.
Well, good morning again. My name is still Alicia. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a trans woman wearing a purple top. It's kind of a tie-dye color. I have a purple scrunchies, purple flower. And yes, I do wear it entirely because you people say nice things about it. This past Friday, April 12th, GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, marked its Day of Silence, an event that began in '96 at the University of Virginia. The next year expanded to 100 universities, and now that number is somewhere around 8,000. It was started with the intention of spreading awareness of the effects of bullying and harassment on the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. It has changed over the years in how it's commemorated, with some now seeing it as the Day of No Silence, a day where you speak up on behalf of those who are marginalized. Although some still engage in the silent protest as a way to communicate both the sense that voices are being silenced and that the silence from those in power is deafening. Speaking up for others takes courage. That courage to allow yourself to be pushed out of your comfort zone, to let the idea of your own unease not stop you from defending those in need. It is difficult, uncomfortable work. You'll hear a lot of talk on social media from your own radical welcoming team about things like pronouns, the self-descriptors to make people feel included. And sometimes it feels overwhelming from the other side. You know, some have even felt attacked, asking to do all these, change these things for other people. I myself have reacted badly when I was misgendered or dead named. And even those of us to who this feels personal are not immune from making mistakes. But I'd like to look at this from a slightly different perspective this time. Have you ever been told to go with the flow? Don't rock the boat, don't make waves, lower your sails. It's kind of funny how all the metaphors for fitting in are nautical. I have no idea what it is. If you look at the ocean, it doesn't seem that calm to me. And I'm not talking about tsunamis or hurricanes, tidal waves, water spouts, or anything crazy. Just even below that calm surface, all that activity that's going on that is the life of that body of water. There are, organizations in our society that are doing that kind of work. Black Lives Matter in their fight for racial justice, the movements to protect trans rights, to protect reproductive rights, to put an end to the death penalty. All these motions happening beneath the surface of our world, people they are fighting for, it's noticeable. To the rest of us, it just shows up when something goes wrong, when there's a riot or an attack of some kind. That's when we see it. But for those who their lives are being fought for, it gives them courage, it gives them hope. Now, courage is something I have an odd relationship with. I've always found that courage to help others is a much more natural feeling because it gives you that one level of removal from the anxiety and fear of realizing that I'm the target. Courage to me is about action in the face of that fear. When you think about courage, you have to imagine fear intertwined with it because without fear, we wouldn't need to be brave. And I'm not good at bravery, to be honest. I've had days when I will cancel customer appointments because I just don't feel up to going outside and being seen. But when I have to try, a lot of times I look for that courage externally to help fill in what it feels like I'm missing. Small things have given me courage. As I participate in things like choir and other musical events, going into these spaces, there was a concert a composer had here recently at another church that I'd never been to, and I was afraid to go in until I got in and I saw how many flags they had on the wall, the different pride flags. And it's like, okay, it feels safe here. This venue, they have pronouns on their name tags. I feel safe here. And I'll just tell you now, if your organization has a trans person in it, I'm going to go say hi. Not because I don't want to interact with everybody, because if they feel safe here, that gives me courage. Other people loan me little bits of courage all the times. Many mornings, this morning included actually, I go to the same place for breakfast because a nice lady in the drive-thru with pink hair once told me that my makeup looked pretty. That's all it takes some days, that little piece. Something as simple as liking my flower, which is where I abusively, wear this flower as much as possible. I have 4 of them just in case I run out. The youth have given me courage. Seeing these young people living so authentically in their lives, that courage I will never be able to match. But it still feeds mine. It still nourishes something in me that believes this world can change. You all have given me courage. It's no secret that I credit this church for the ability for me to stand here as myself today. So many of you have walked alongside activism, protecting others. You have given yourself, others, me, courage. Now, courage doesn't mean fear goes away, and I don't honestly know if it ever does. But those small acts, those little intentional moments give us courage to continue in the face of that fear. And some days that is all any of us get. Enough courage just to make it through another day. Courage is a shield with which to face our fear, a shining beacon when darkness closes near, a flame of hope against the bitter chill of all that works against us here. It is our motivation to be strong we crave, to protect each other, to help, to save, to understand what we give, we share. When we continue, we can unite, be brave. Courage can be a stranger too, a face that can look just like you, whomever's words, whatever deeds can reach us there and pull us through. So this I ask, I implore, may we break the walls, open doors, let the fear lose its painful grip. What courage I have, may it be yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellie. I invite you now to enter a time of prayer or meditation or quiet reflection. And the prayer for this day recognizes the anniversary coming up on Thursday, I believe it is, April 19th, 1995. It's 29 years later now. And this prayer is actually adapted from one that was written by the Reverend John Saxton for the anniversary of September 11th. But of course, we received a forewarning of that with the domestic terrorist attack of April 19th. April 19th is simply one more day on the calendar. Another beautiful sunny day in springtime. And yet, for the people of this city, it will never be just another day on the calendar. We remember that beautiful sunny April day 29 years ago, a day that began like so many others with people going about their day-to-day lives. And then, in a minute, it became something else. A day that is painful to remember, but impossible to forget. And so let us pause to remember. We remember with gratitude all the heroes and heroines of that day, all the firefighters and emergency responders and others who ran toward the Murrah building, who demonstrated such courage in the midst of hatred. We remember in sorrow the 168 innocents who perished, including 19 children, and who included 2 members of this congregation, Mary Renty and Susan Farrell, and one other who took their life sometime afterward. We remember everyone who was a victim, who was deeply affected by this calculated and senseless violence. We remember with hope the voices that called and still call for unity in the face of division. And remembering the terror and violence of that day, we dedicate ourselves this day to raising our voices against fanaticism, bigotry, violence, terror, and hatred in all its forms. Let us dedicate ourselves to doing whatever we can to create a future in which all people can live without fear, in communities of love, freedom, and peace. May it be so because we make it so. And let us pause now for a moment of silence. Amen. So be it, and blessed be. Well, one lovely thing about the positioning of the minister's chair is that, especially on a day when we have both our beautiful choir and our beautiful bell choir, I get to be surrounded by glorious music. And thanks to Lana Henson for conducting while Ebuka, our regular choir director, is away doing his service obligation. So not far outside Taos, New Mexico, where Reverend Diana recently moved, there is a 50-mile canyon. It's called the Rio Grande Gorge. And some of you who have been to New Mexico may have been there, may be familiar with it. It is named for the river that runs through it, as the gorge is part of, and the gorge is longer. It's part of the longer tectonic Rio Grande Rift that runs north to south and divides New Mexico in two. A bridge spans the gorge near Taos. It can be crossed either by car or on foot, and it is called, you won't be surprised at this, the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge. Turns out it is the 5th tallest span in the United States, and it is the 2nd highest in our country that passes over a state highway. Well, years before I actually moved to New Mexico, I took a writing workshop in Taos with Natalie Goldberg of Writing Down the Bones fame. And one day during our afternoon free time, Emily, another participant, asked me if I would like to go on a drive to see the gorge. Well, I'm always game to explore, so I didn't give that a second thought. Sure, why not, I said. And after a short drive, we arrived at the gorge and parked our car in a very small lot near the bridge abutment. From this vantage point, there wasn't much to see. We saw only a great brown expanse of land and a pair of concrete railings framing the highway. So this is the gorge, I thought to myself. Doesn't seem like a big deal. Nonchalantly, I started across. Then I looked down. Without warning, my whole world changed. What had been solid ground under my feet became nothing. Suddenly, we were suspended in midair. Below us was a gaping chasm. The Rio, 650 feet below, was barely visible. The only thing separating us from a long drop was that bridge and its very skimpy-looking railing. So, no big deal turned suddenly into, oh my God. From within me rose up a bubble of pure terror. It felt as though a flock of birds were taking off inside my chest, and they escaped along with a gasp of awe and wonder. Meanwhile, to quote writer Margaret Halsey, my knees could have been stirred with a spoon. Faced with this, what was I going to do? I knew I couldn't magically erase what I was feeling. Fear of heights runs in my family. You wouldn't have gotten my dad or my middle sister anywhere near the Gorge Bridge. They also spent their lives avoiding small aircraft, Ferris wheels, and the top deck of Yankee Stadium. I have a milder case of acrophobia, but it's real nonetheless. So, should I turn back and wait in the car? That was certainly an option. And if I did turn back, nothing would be lost beyond some pride. Emily wouldn't mind if I sidelined myself. The decision what to do was entirely mine. But some part of me resisted the urge to turn back. Maybe it was pure ego, pride, or maybe it was my wiser self who somehow knew that crossing the bridge would teach me something. Whichever, I knew I had to move forward, and so I did. I tried walking slowly. I tried walking fast. I tried meditation. I tried deep breathing. I tried walking on the road to gain distance from the edge. And I tried looking off in the distance rather than into the chasm. I tried thinking about all the people and cars who had made this crossing safely. And as an earthquake survivor, I tried not to think of the rift's seismic activity. So, did any of those tactics expunge my fear? No, not really. The fear was with me all the way across and all the way back. What kept me going was simply this: the slow, steady pace of putting one foot in front of the other. Well, was it courage I found on the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge that day? Well, maybe, or maybe not. If it was courage, it's certainly of a minor kind. It's nothing compared to what we saw on April 19th, and nothing compared to what we see in other parts of the world, such as in the Ukraine. But we all have to start somewhere, right? And what's in front of us is as good a place as any. Now, this memory is almost 30 years old, and yet it continues to be useful in my life. I call it up when I'm feeling challenged, when fear gets in the way. And perhaps you have similar stories, memories that can function like a little smooth stone that you carry in your pocket. They can remind you of times when you have overcome fear, when you have done something that's hard for you. In that reminder, maybe you can find the courage to do other hard things. A very common self-deprecating assessment of ourselves is often, "I'm not very brave." But perhaps we only think that because we subscribe to some misconceptions about courage. And Ellie touched on these in her reflection. Two misconceptions in particular stand out in my mind as I think about this. First, there's the idea that being courageous means having no fear. But as many brave people will tell you, that's rarely the case. There are concert pianists whose knees shake before every performance. There are trial lawyers who can't sleep the night before court appearances. And a skilled community organizer from our organization, Voice's counterpart in Los Angeles, also known as Voice, once told me that he was highly anxious before every action he led. And if we've read a biography of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we know that he wrestled with fear his whole life. The difference between those folk and the rest of us may have nothing to do with whether they live with fear, and have everything to do with how they manage it. Mark Twain once said, "Courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, not absence of fear." More recently, Nelson Mandela said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." Can we learn to resist fear, master it, even triumph over it? I believe we can. But for some of us, a first step on the path of courage may be even more basic. A good start could be simply to acknowledge our fears and accept that we have them. By doing this, we unlock mental energy that could otherwise be bound up in blaming ourselves, reproaching ourselves because of our supposed cowardice. And this is energy that can go toward more constructive things. Marilyn Ferguson, a New Age writer, once suggested that we might even welcome our fears. Properly understood, she says, they are some of our best teachers. They are a treasure house of self-knowledge. Knowing ourselves better can point to paths beyond our fears and help us act in spite of them. Now, of course, there are things that we should be afraid of, or at least cautious about. People who fly airplanes have a saying, there are old pilots, there are bold pilots, and there are no old, bold pilots. So it's worth remembering, courage is not the same as bravado. Bravado is all about faking courage or ignoring our fear. And a second misconception equates courage solely with outward acts, heroic rescues or spectacular feats of physical prowess. But courage is also found in quiet daily acts of resolve. And it may well involve internal struggle rather than external. Recently, I stumbled on an Emily Dickinson poem from 1859 that expresses this idea. Here are her first two stanzas. To fight aloud is very brave, but gallanter I know who charge within the bosom the cavalry of woe, who win and nations do not see, who fall and none observe, whose dying eyes no country regards with patriot love. And Dickinson's words remind me of a contemporary saying, be kind, for everyone we meet is fighting a hard battle. When we encounter a stranger or a friend or a fellow Unitarian Universalist, we have no idea what courage it may have taken them simply to get out of bed in the morning. And that reminds me of something else. Words of the artist Brian Andreas. Anyone can slay a dragon, Brian says, but try waking up every morning and loving the world all over again. That's what takes a real hero. Try waking up every morning and loving the world all over again. That's the kind of courage each one of us can practice. And for many of us, it does take practice. It's worth noting in this connection that the word courage comes from the same linguistic root as the word heart. So, what are some of the ways that people love the world? They are countless, limited only by the number of people in the world, multiplied by the number of possible situations. That gets to be a pretty big number. A young school student loves the world when they go and join the child who's sitting alone in the school cafeteria. A person of any age loves the world when they kindly but firmly challenge a transphobic remark or a racist one and call the speaker to the better angels of their nature. You love the world if you don't get out much anymore, but you stay home and write letters to people who think they need a little encouragement. Or you write postcards for Vote Forward or You the Vote, encouraging people to make their voice heard at the polls. You love the world the morning after your spouse or partner has died, and you have no idea how you can possibly endure another day, and yet you get out of bed and do the tasks that need doing, get in touch with the people who need to know. And this quiet, ordinary courage also takes practice, and it is a practice. Every day we can nudge the boundaries of our comfort zone just a little and do a thing that feels hard or risky or unfamiliar. We can push ourselves into a place that leaves us feeling awkward or incompetent or vulnerable. And in doing so, we may help someone else and help ourselves in the process. As an example, I think of the volunteer work that I've started to do back in Albuquerque with a group called The Landing. This is a local Episcopal church's ministry with asylum seekers, people who have just been released from detention and need a temporary place to stay before they move to their sponsors. And at the landing, asylum seekers receive a warm welcome, a good meal, and a bed for a night or two. In other words, a place to catch their breath before traveling to meet their sponsors. It feels good to make a difference in this way, to offer this very small but strategically important assistance to people who've had a tough time of it. The guests are very appreciative. They inspire us with their courage. And at the same time, when I volunteer at the landing, I'm doing something that I usually try very hard to avoid. That is, I step into a situation where I feel awkward and incompetent, things I absolutely hate to feel. And it's not about meeting new people, I love that part, but it's about trying to navigate language differences. I thought I was pretty good speaking Spanish, but I've quickly discovered my limits. And yet I know with practice that I can get comfortable with the discomfort and even push past it and do what I need to do. Now, this is clearly small stuff. It's not exactly noble or valiant, but practicing this small, ordinary courage, I think, can build us up for bigger things and might even help fortify us for the times we live in, a future in which the survival of democracy is now uncertain, not to mention the future of our beloved planet Earth. I don't know if any of you have read historian Timothy Snyder's little book on tyranny, 20 lessons from the 20th century. Sometimes I order a whole stack of them and give them to people. And Snyder's book lists a series of acts of quiet resistance that we can engage in to keep the flame of democracy alive in these times and in possible harder times to come. His first lesson from the 20th century is do not obey authoritarians in advance. And his last one is be as courageous as you can. In between, Snyder says, the minor choices we make are a kind of vote. In the politics of every day, our words and gestures for their absence count very much. So practicing ordinary courage now can prepare us for the future when we may be called to acts of extraordinary courage. May we be ready. Remember, we don't have to face the future alone. And we may find that we are braver than we think we are. So may it be. So the final hymn is one of my favorites. It's almost 100 years old, and it's from Harry Emerson Fosdick, who was a social gospel preacher in the 1920s.
Round thy
After the benediction, we invite you to join us in Daniel Hall for coffee, lemonade, and conversation. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage for the living of these days. This is the message of our faith: to act with passion in the face of injustice, to love with courage in the midst of life's pain. This is the meaning of our chalice flame. May it empower our hearts until we are together again. And we've extinguished the flame, but not the light of love and community which burns on in our hearts. Blessed be.